What if I told you that we've been lied to for our entire lives? That everything we've ever been told in school, in the media, and by scientists about the Earth, the solar system, and the universe has been an elaborate deception pulled over our eyes to keep us from discovering the singular truth that lies at the heart of our very existence, the one thing that the people in charge have gone to unfathomable lengths to ensure that we never realize. Is it possible that we live on a flat plane, a simple disk encapsulated by a dome-like firmament above that contains the sun, the moon, and the entirety of the known universe? That would be pretty freaky, right? Well, let's talk about the flat Earth. If we're going to explore the flat Earth, then we're going to need a map. There are many variations on what people consider to be the definitive flat Earth atlas, but the most common diagram is going to be based on the azimuthal equidistant projection that places the North Pole at the center. Now, this particular map projection has been around for hundreds of years. It's most commonly seen as the logo for the United Nations, and it was never intended to represent the Earth literally as a flat plane. This is just one of many projection types that we use to represent a three-dimensional globe as a two-dimensional image that can be printed onto paper. The most common map of the world that we see is the Mercator projection. This isn't trying to claim that the Earth is a rectangle, it's just a very convenient way to illustrate the land masses of the Earth in a very concise and proportional image. Coming back to our flat Earth projection though, since the North Pole is the center of the world, the South Pole continent of Antarctica must in turn be an all-encompassing ring of permanent ice and snow. This is the edge of the flat Earth. If there were no physical barrier at the end of the flat Earth, then all of the water in the oceans would simply drain off, which would be silly. So instead, what we have acting as our containment is a 45-meter vertical wall of solid ice, Game of Thrones style. According to flat Earth mythology, there is no Antarctic continent, only an impassable wall of ice that prevents us from reaching the physical walls of the dome. We'll get to the dome in a bit. And even if you were to attempt to scale the wall yourself, you'd be met by the armed security that guard the ice wall and permanently imprison anyone daring to approach. Sounds very mysterious and terrifying, and as recently as 60 years ago, that might have passed for something that the average person would believe. That is, until things like Antarctic cruise lines became a thing. Now we have giant boats that ferry thousands of people to the coast of Antarctica, where they find that instead of a great wall of ice, there are just a bunch of penguins occupying a very usual coastal geography. Of course, there are sections of the Antarctic coast that are just solid slabs of ice. That is real, but it's not true across the entire board. There are plenty of areas along the coast that are low and flat or rocky and mountainous. But maybe people only think that they're seeing Antarctica. The people in charge could just be sending them to some random island off the coast of South America that's specifically designed to maintain the illusion. How would you know? GPS? More like government positioning system. And just look at penguins and try to tell me that's an actual animal and not a specifically designed robot. You probably still think birds are real. The flat Earth map might also be a bit easier to sell if we didn't have airplanes, because this adds another layer of complication. According to our disk theory, the distance between Santiago, Chile and Sydney, Australia should be the longest trip in the world. And that's if you're moving in a straight line, which would take the plane across all of South America, Canada, the North Pole, Russia, and East Asia before reaching Australia, which is an anomaly that people expecting the Earth to be a globe would likely notice. So planes must fly in a big arc that avoids all of the inconvenient land masses. It takes about 14 hours for a plane to travel between Santiago and Sydney, the furthest distance between 2 points on the flat Earth. It takes about 7 hours to fly from New York to London, which by comparison on the same map are just a stone's throw away from each other. Now, obviously the people in charge must make airplanes fly at different speeds depending on how close they are to the North Pole. Okay, but what about the sun? Clearly this is a giant burning star in distant space that we orbit around, and then there's the moon, the planets, the stars, everything that we can clearly see above our heads. And now we enter the firmament. This is a great dome that encapsulates the flat Earth and contains everything that we see in the sky and so-called outer space. Because if the Earth is a flat disk and the sun is a gigantic light millions of miles away from it, then there would be no day and night cycle. So therefore the sun must be significantly smaller and closer than what we've been led to believe. On the flat Earth, the sun is still a glowing ball of light, but it's only about 50 kilometers in diameter, and it moves in a circular pattern around the outer edge of the disk, but within the dome of the firmament. The moon behaves in a similar pattern, circling on an opposite position to the sun. That's why we see one during the day and one at night. They're at opposite ends of the disk, except for those times when we clearly see the sun and moon at the same time. But that's probably just a reflection off the dome or something. And because of the inverse square law, which explains that the closer a light source is, the faster the light will fall off into the darkness, the close sun still explains the day and night cycle. What it doesn't explain, however, is the solar eclipse. These definitely happen, even though the people in charge do their very best to try and convince you not to look directly at it. This is a phenomenon that is typically explained by the moon passing in between the Earth and the sun and creating a shadow. But if the close sun and the close moon are at opposite ends of the dome, then they couldn't possibly cross over each other. So therefore, it must be true that there is an anti-sun that also exists within our dome. This object moves in a much more erratic pattern. It's typically seen at night, obscuring light from the moon, but on rare occasions, the anti-sun crosses over the path of the regular sun and darkens the light. You'd be able to see the anti-sun clearly during these events if you only looked directly at it, but we've all been scared away from doing so. The government-issued eclipse viewing glasses are purposely designed to obscure the anti-sun. And what about the planets and the stars, the trillions of lights in the night sky that must clearly illustrate an infinite universe? Or are they simply lights suspended in the water of the firmament? Would you honestly be able to tell the difference? So many of us have been led to believe that these observations of the flat Earth were fundamental to human society up until fairly recently, that everyone in the pre-modern era knew that the Earth was flat until science and the government showed them the real truth. But in reality, it's the flat Earth that has been the modern construct, and the round Earth is the long-standing belief that has maintained across millennia of human civilization. Most people will equate the theory of a round Earth back to the ancient philosopher Plato, born in the year 428 BC. Plato's revelation was not so much that the Earth was round, but he was convinced that the Earth was three-dimensional in nature. He envisioned it more like a cube, or at least he believed that the Earth had been formed out of cubes of matter, and he wasn't necessarily wrong about that. If you take all of the different shapes and patterns of rock on Earth and average them out, you do arrive at a cube-like shape. It was Plato's student Aristotle that really dialed down into the spherical universe in his text On the Heavens in 350 BC. He proposed that the heavens were literally composed of 55 concentric crystalline spheres to which the celestial objects were attached and which rotated at different velocities. Most of his assumptions have held up over time. The only part that he really got wrong was assigning the Earth as the center of attachment. This is what we refer to as a geocentric model, where the sun orbits the Earth. But On the Heavens was correct enough that it influenced another ancient scientist, Eratosthenes, who in the year 200 BC decided that if the Earth is a sphere, then he should be able to calculate its circumference. And he did just that by observing the angle of shadows cast at different locations on the north-south axis at different times of the day. The difference in the sun's angle between two locations was relative to the physical distance on the Earth's surface. Then he extrapolated that out to calculate the distance around the entire circumference of the Earth. Now, it's hard to know exactly the units of measure they were relying on in those ancient calculations. Stadia is a relatively undefined length, but if we assume it's the average length of a Roman stadium, then Eratosthenes was correct about the size of the Earth to within about a 10% margin of error. And then, 1,500 years after the time of Plato, people were still so firm in their belief of a round Earth that they attempted to sail completely around it. Christopher Columbus sailed west from Spain with the full intention that he would find a new route all the way to China and India. Or is this all just what we have been conveniently told to believe? At the core of the flat Earth ideology, is the unwavering confidence that every single article of historical or scientific proof of a round Earth was fabricated for the singular reason of concealing the flat Earth truth from the people of the world. Every book, every artifact, every supposedly ancient globe you've ever seen, every image of the Earth and outer space has all been an elaborate deception. You think dinosaurs were real? Those bones are nothing more than movie props buried in the ground to keep us distracted. NASA isn't exploring outer space. They're using taxpayers' money to create photoshopped images and CGI videos that support the round Earth agenda. They're also guarding the ice wall. So why do you think rockets always fly in an arc? They're following the curve of the dome. Elon Musk has even tried and failed to break through it. You can see this with your own eyes. These jellyfish-shaped clouds behind the rocket, that's a Falcon 9 skipping off the surface of the firmament. There's always an explanation for everything. There's no reasoning with someone who is just going to call you a liar no matter what you say, or dismiss a legitimate criticism with unfounded make-believe. Is there even a point to arguing? Yeah, not really. And what if the Earth was flat? If you woke up tomorrow and the government was on TV saying, you know what, we actually have been lying to you. You all do live on a flat disk with a dome around it. What would change? Would you just stop going to work and paying taxes? What do we gain from learning that the Earth is flat? And what do you gain from pretending that it's round? That might be the most baffling question of all. What would you do? Let us know in the comments below. Meet us back here every week for more updates on everything aerospace industry and interstellar exploration related. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up today if you liked it. That really helps us out for real. And subscribe to the Space Race for more videos just like this. We do one long form essay and one news update every week. And if you'd like more, we've got 2 more on the screen for you right now.